I was clutching a bouquet of wilted lilies at my father's graveside in a rainy Seattle cemetery when my sister announced she'd sell our family's historic bookstore to fund her latest dream life scam with her shady fiancé. Oh, hi everyone. I'm Sophia Reynolds, and if you're here for one of those stories where the underdog finally gets her due, buckle up because this one's got layers like onion-level tears and all. You know, the kind where betrayal stings so deep you can barely breathe. But then karma swoops in like a plot twist you never saw coming. I've been holding this in for months now, spilling it all out because honestly, sharing it feels like the only way to let go. And trust me, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, this might hit home. Let's dive in, starting from the beginning, nice and slow, so you can feel every gut punch along the way. Growing up in Seattle wasn't all rainy days and Starbucks runs for me. Our family owned this gem called Reynolds Reads, a cozy independent bookstore tucked away in the Pike Place Market area. Since my grandparents opened it in the 60s, it wasn't some mega chain, but it had soul. Creaky wooden shelves stacked with first editions, a little coffee nook where locals debated Hemingway over lattes, and that musty book smell that wrapped around you like a hug. Dad poured his heart into it after Grandpa passed, turning it into our family's anchor. But me, I was the one who actually kept it afloat while everyone else treated it like their personal ATM. See, I was the middle kid, sandwiched between my older sister, Lila, and our baby brother, who tragically passed away from leukemia when he was just 6. That loss shattered us all, but it hit Mom and Dad hardest. They funneled everything into Lila after that. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Lila was stunning with that effortless charisma that made people flock to her. She got the dance lessons, the private school tuition, even a gap year in Europe funded by dipping into the store's savings. Me? I was the practical one. The reliable Sophia, who worked weekends at the bookstore from age 14, balancing ledgers and stocking shelves while studying for my business degree at the University of Washington on scholarships and student loans. Lila, meanwhile, bounced from one bad decision to the next. After her Europe trip, she found herself in a string of failed startups. First a yoga studio that tanked because she ghosted the rent, then a vegan food truck that went belly up after she borrowed from the bookstore's petty cash for marketing. Mom always bailed her out, saying, "She's passionate, Sophia. You wouldn't understand. You've got your head in those spreadsheets." And Dad? He'd grumble but sign the checks, especially after his heart started acting up a few years back. I tried confronting them once, during a family dinner at our modest craftsman home in Ballard. "Why does Lila get endless do-overs while I scrape by?" I asked, my voice shaking. Mom just sighed. "Family helps family, Sophia. Lila needs it more. You've always been so independent." Independent? More like abandoned. By the time I graduated college, I'd moved into a tiny apartment in Capitol Hill, working full-time at the bookstore while freelancing bookkeeping gigs on the side. Lila? She met this guy, Vance, a real estate investor who smelled like cheap cologne and bad intentions. He had this slick smile and a rap sheet of failed flips. Houses he'd buy, gut, and abandon when the market dipped. But Lila was smitten, and soon they were engaged, planning a destination wedding in Hawaii that, you guessed it, the family was expected to fund. I bit my tongue, focusing on keeping Reynolds Reads profitable amid online giants like Amazon breathing down our necks. We even started hosting author events and a book club to boost foot traffic. Dad seemed proud, but Mom, she'd roll her eyes. "Sophia's turning our legacy into a hobby shop," she'd mutter. The betrayal really started simmering when Dad's health declined. He had a massive heart attack 2 years ago at 68, and spent his last months in and out of Virginia Mason Hospital. I was there every day, driving him to chemo. Wait, no, it was cardiac rehab, managing the store single-handedly, even cooking meals for Mom who was too distraught to function. Lila? She'd pop in for photo ops, posting selfies on Instagram, with captions like cherishing every moment with Dad to family first. But when it came to the hard stuff, like helping with his meds or covering shifts, "Vance and I have a networking event," she'd say. Dad passed quietly one foggy Seattle morning, his hand in mine as I read him passages from his favorite Steinbeck novel. Mom wailed at the news. Lila flew in from a business trip in Vegas, tears streaming for the cameras. The funeral was at a small chapel overlooking Puget Sound, rain pattering on the roof like a somber drumbeat. About 50 people showed, locals from the bookstore, old friends, a few authors we'd hosted. I stood there in my black dress, numb, clutching those lilies I'd picked from Dad's garden. That's when Lila, mid-eulogy, dropped the bomb. "Dad would want us to move forward," she said, her voice all honeyed sympathy. "That's why, after talking with Mom, we've decided to sell Reynolds Reed's. Vance has connections. We can turn it into condos or something modern. The proceeds will help us start fresh. Maybe fund my new wellness brand with Vance. It's what Dad would have wanted for the family to thrive." "Thrive?" My jaw hit the floor. Mom nodded beside her, dabbing her eyes. "Sophia's got her own life," Mom added softly, like I wasn't standing right there. "She doesn't need the store tying her down." People murmured agreements, patting Lila's back. No one looked at me. I felt like I'd been gutted, the rain soaking through my coat mirroring the chill in my bones. Our legacy gone? For Lila's scam with Vance? That bookstore wasn't just a business. It was Dad's soul, my sanctuary. And they were auctioning it off like yesterday's news. I stumbled out after the service, hyperventilating in my car, the betrayal hitting like a tidal wave. How long had they planned this? Why cut me out? I drove home in a daze, the Seattle skyline blurring through tears. The days after the funeral blurred into a haze of grief and fury. I threw myself into the bookstore, opening early and closing late, as if keeping it running could ward off the sale. Customers noticed. Regulars like old Mr. Hargrove, who'd buy mysteries every Tuesday, asked if I was okay. "You look like you've seen a ghost, dear," he'd say. I'd force a smile. Just missing Dad. But inside I was unraveling. Mom called a family meeting at the house a week later, Vance tagging along like he owned the place. Lila spread out real estate listings on the kitchen table, circling potential buyers. "This developer from Bellevue offered $1.2 million, she gushed. "Think of it. We could split it, Mom gets a condo, Vance and I invest in our brand, and Sophia. Well, you could start something new." "Something new?" I snapped, my voice cracking for the first time. "That store is my life. Dad built it for us, all of us. How can you just erase it?" Mom shushed me. "Don't be dramatic, Sophia. Lila's right. It's outdated. Vance says the market's hot for mixed-use spaces." Vance leaned back, smirking. "Yeah, kiddo. Books are dying. Time to evolve. Kiddo?" I was 35, for God's sake. I stormed out, slamming the door so hard the neighbor's dog barked. That night, alone in my apartment with a bottle of cheap Cabernet, the breaking point hit. I scrolled through old photos, me and Dad at the store's 50th anniversary party, him beaming as I unveiled our new online catalog. Why hadn't he fought for me? Why let Mom and Lila steamroll everything? Tears streamed as I rifled through a box of his things I'd taken, old ledgers, a faded photo of Grandpa opening the store. Tucked in the back was a manila envelope, sealed with Dad's handwriting. "For Sophia, in case of rainy days." My heart skipped. Inside, legal documents. A trust deed from 2010, transferring Reynolds Reed's into a irrevocable trust, with me as the sole beneficiary and trustee. What the hell? I read it 3 times, the words swimming. Dad had set this up quietly after his first heart scare, citing estate planning. The store wasn't family property anymore. It was mine. Locked in trust to protect the legacy from unwise decisions. There were notes from his lawyer, a guy named Harlan Brooks in downtown Seattle, confirming everything. And a handwritten letter from Dad. "Soph, I know I've been quiet, but I've watched you carry this place. Lila's got fire, but it's wildfire, uncontrolled. This is yours. Keep it safe. Love, Dad." I sat there sobbing, the betrayal crystallizing. Mom and Lila had no clue. They'd assumed it was all theirs to sell. But Dad had seen the favoritism, the risks with Lila's choices. He'd protected me, us, from afar. The fury morphed into something sharper. Resolve. They thought I was the pushover? Fine, I'd play along. Until the moment was right. Armed with the envelope, I didn't confront them right away. No, I needed proof ammo. I called Harlan Brooks the next morning, my hands shaking as I sipped. Coffee in my apartment overlooking the bustling streets of Capitol Hill. Miss Reynolds, he said, his voice gravelly like an old detective novel. Your father was adamant about discretion. He knew your family dynamics. We met at his office in a sleek high-rise near the Space Needle, rain streaking the windows. Harlan laid it out. The trust was ironclad, created when Lila's first business flop cost the family $50,000. Dad had seen Vance coming a mile away. Turns out, he'd hired a PI back then, uncovering Vance's history of fraud, embezzlement from a past partner, shady loans. Your dad added a clause, Harlan said. If anyone tries to challenge the trust, it triggers a full audit of family finances. An audit? My mind reeled. That meant exposing everything. Lila's borrows from the store, Vance's debts, Harlan hinted at over $200,000 in gambling and bad investments, even Mom's secret credit card binges to fund Lila's whims. The shock factor hit like lightning. Dad hadn't just protected the store, he'd built a trap for the betrayal he predicted. He loved you all, Harlan added, but he trusted you most, Sophia. You were the one who showed up. I left his office buzzing, piecing together more truths.
Digging through Dad's old emails I'd inherited his laptop, I found correspondence with the PI, photos of Vance at Underground, poker games in Tacoma, emails about Lila covering for him, and the biggest twist? A DNA test Dad had done quietly 5 years ago. After overhearing Mom on the phone, it confirmed what I'd never suspected. Lila wasn't his biological daughter. Mom had an affair early in their marriage, during a rough patch when Dad was building the store. He never confronted her, never treated Lila differently, but it explained his quiet distance and why he safeguarded everything for me, his only blood child. The shock floored me. All those years of favoritism, Mom overcompensating for her guilt, Dad swallowing it to keep the peace. I felt a mix of pity and rage. Pity for Dad's silent suffering, rage at the web of lies. That night, as fairies honked in the sound below my window, I stared at the documents. This wasn't just about the store anymore. It was about unraveling the facade, forcing the truth into the light. But how? I needed to time it perfectly. Let them dig their own grave a little deeper. Revenge isn't always loud explosions. Sometimes it's a slow drip, like Seattle rain wearing down stone. I played the grieving daughter, attending sale prep meetings at the house. Lila and Vance paraded buyers through the bookstore, me smiling politely while noting every detail. This could be a great tech hub, Vance schmoozed to one investor. I nodded, but inside, plotting. First, I quietly filed the trust papers with the city, locking any sale attempts. Then, I tipped off a local journalist friend from our book club, anonymous, of course, about potential fraud in a Pike Place landmark sale. The story simmered online, raising eyebrows. Karma started nibbling. Vance's creditors called, hounding Lila. She confided in me one tipsy evening at a Belltown bar. It's just temporary stress, she slurred. Once the store sells, I hugged her, biting back the truth. The real method came via Harlan. We arranged a mediation session, disguised as a will reading. Mom and Lila thought it was routine estate stuff. I invited the PI too, for witness testimony. Meanwhile, I fortified the store, new security cams, updated inventory, even a community petition to landmark it as historic. Locals rallied over 500 signatures. Karma ramped up when Vance's past caught up. A lawsuit from an old partner hit the news, freezing his assets. Lila panicked, dipping into Mom's savings again. Mom, frail from grief, started questioning, is this wise, Lila? I felt a twinge of guilt. They were family, after all. But remembering Dad's letter, no, this was justice. Methodical and earned. The drip became a downpour. The confrontation went down in Harlan's conference room, overlooking Elliott Bay. Mom, Lila, Vance, and a couple aunts showed, thinking it was about dividing Dad's meager savings. Harlan started neutral. Mr. Reynolds left specific instructions. Then, boom, the trust deed projected on the screen. Reynolds reads is held in irrevocable trust for Sophia Reynolds, sole beneficiary. Silence. Then chaos. Leela leaped up. What? That's impossible. Dad wouldn't, Mom gasped. Vance cursed, demanding proof. Harlan calmly presented documents. The PI's report on Vance's fraud, even bank statements showing Leela's unauthorized withdrawals 1-0 over years. This triggers an audit, Harlan said. Potential charges for embezzlement. The room erupted. Leela sobbed, accusing me of forgery. Vance bolted, muttering about lawyers. Mom broke down. I favored her because the affair. I thought it made up for it. The DNA reveal. I didn't even need to say it. Harlan had the test results ready, per Dad's sealed instructions. Leela paled. I'm not his? Mom nodded, tears flowing. He knew, but loved you anyway. I stood, calm but intense. This isn't revenge, Leela. It's protection. Dad saw what I didn't. Your fire burns everything. Vance? He's poison. Sell your dreams elsewhere. Karma sealed it. Police waited outside Vance's lawsuit-turned-warrant. He was arrested for outstanding fraud. Leela crumbled, begging forgiveness. I offered terms. Rehab for her codependency. Turns out she had her own shopping addiction. Mom, a small stipend if she volunteered at the store. No more enabling. They agreed. Broken but maybe mendable. As we left, the sun broke through clouds, a rare Seattle miracle. Phew. Spilling that tea still gets my heart racing. Looking back, Dad's quiet love was the real hero, teaching me that justice isn't always a fight. Sometimes it's a safeguard you build in the shadows. I run Reynolds Reads now, thriving with events and an online presence. Leela's in therapy, slowly rebuilding. Mom helps out. Our talks deeper. Vance? Serving time. Karma, right? If this story resonated, if you've got your own tales of betrayal turned triumph, drop them in the comments. Hit that subscribe button for more justice stories where the overlooked rise up. Thanks for listening, friends. Until next time, remember, the truth always finds its page.